2015-263, abatement of a nuisance tree at the intersection of 3rd Avenue and West Valley Highway.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. The resolution before you has a little bit of a history. This is about 6 months into it at this point. And I think even before wintertime, when the tree on West Valley Highway was identified as a nuisance, and the information in your packet outlines the series of steps that I've taken as a staff member to try to notify the property owner of the issue and try to get them to rectify the nuisance tree. To date, been unsuccessful in contacting the property owner through this series of letters. So our municipal code, section 8.20, provides a mechanism when property owners are non-responsive to an abatement issue or a nuisance, a vegetation nuisance. And so the resolution is one of the mechanisms that would allow us as a public agency to abate a hazard on private property. So that's really the gist of the issue before you tonight. The other issue I just want to share with you that today, this morning, I was contacted by the property owner. So we'll see how this proceeds, but the next step would be to move this forward in order to keep the process moving forward to the next week. Council still, staff would recommend that the resolution continue to be moved forward unless the property owner abates the issue between now and next Monday night. But if you do act favorably after the public hearing, take public comment next week, and then act upon the resolution, it does provide for the property owner to give a provision to take care of the problem before June 30th. And then if the resolution is passed after that date, then you would grant the public works manager authority to abate the hazard. And just so we're all clear again, the tree is on West Valley Highway, and 3rd Avenue is the cross street, and it's approximately 250 feet north of 3rd Avenue on West Valley Highway on the west side of the street. So that's the summary of the resolution for you tonight.
Lot 7.
What prevents us from taking a bucket truck out there and going to the approximate easement line and cutting that portion of it off?
That is something the city could choose to do, but it really wouldn't mitigate the entire hazard because the tree is dead all the way back to the property. So the stump and that component of the tree still would be a potential where it could come down off of the slope and onto the right-of-way.
But realistically, if it did, it's going to come down and slide down the slope and hit the ditch, most likely. I mean, right now I can see where it can come down and hit a car, but if we were to go to the easement line, go straight up, does any property owner that has a hazard hanging into their space, even if the tree or bush doesn't belong to them, they have the right to trim it without, you know, it's a courtesy to contact the landowner, but, you know, in this case, I don't see why we couldn't have at least done that 6 months ago.
That's certainly an option for council to consider. It wasn't an option that I considered because of the expense. It's one that we would have to contract out, irrespective. We don't have a bucket truck to be able to do that.
I thought we did.
Further council questions?
If we have to abate it, do we charge the landowner?
Yes, that is written into the resolution that there is a mechanism that we would bill the landowner for the cost of any equipment that we would have to rent, or if we hired a tree service to abate it, as well as staff costs to prepare the material to get the contract let and time like we're having here tonight. And that would be a net 30 from the time the hazard had been abated, that the property owner would have 30 days to pay the bill.
Further council questions?
Questions, discussion?
Yes.
Since the landowner just finally made contact. I'm assuming this is an absentee landowner, doesn't live on the property itself.
It is an unoccupied property, yes.
We're talking basically 2 weeks before we would want to take action. I think it's this so-called hazard's been there for more than 6 months. Through the period where we typically have issues with it coming down, I think we should grant the property owner at least 30 days to deal with the issue before we intervene.
Other discussion on this?
How long have we been discussing it with him, or attempting to discuss this issue? Several months?
Since December of 2014. And part of the issue, why it's taken so long to bring it before you for action, it wasn't for a lack of desire to try to let time lapse, but the mechanism within our municipal code is very precise in the timing. And unfortunately, that timing, getting the agendas prepared and then meeting the time frames to schedule a public hearing. Another step I didn't speak to that I have to do tomorrow or Wednesday is I have to post on the property a sign that alerts the property owner and the public that there's a public hearing scheduled for Monday night. So there is a tremendous amount of administrative coordination just to get the issue before you to consider passing the resolution. And the last letter that was sent informed the property owner that June 15th was the deadline, but now it's the 15th, the tree is still there, so even if you act favorably on next Monday night, that still would grant the property owner until June 30th if the resolution is passed.
Just more discussion items. We have so many government regulations wanting to impose government will on property owners. You can't cut trees because they have habitat value in certain areas. You can't you can't encroach in certain critical areas and things like that. And I think because what I noticed in the notices that we tried to send out, every notice went to a different address. And it sounds like we finally figured out which address to get it to get notification. We're now in communication with the landowner starting as of today. I don't think it's unreasonable to give the landowner 30 days to act on this now that they finally got notice. And I don't think we need to be heavy-handed in this unless we get communication from the landowner that would indicate that he has no intention of removing it, and then I think we can take action. But I think as long as we have favorable communications with the landowner, that we should give them a reasonable period of time so that they're not rushing to have to go out and contract someone if they would like to come in and mitigate the issue themselves at no cost to themselves. We give them the appropriate time to get the resources they need to address the issue.
If I may respond? Certainly that's council's pleasure as conversation at next week's discussion on the resolution. Or if there was direction tonight, that could be something we could modify to give 30 days notice from the passage of the resolution, if that's council's pleasure.
Any other discussion on this?
I don't know if there's a typo on the address, but on the letter dated June 9th, it's got the address 30217, but in the mailing address in the list of each of the letters, it's 30127. Which address is the correct address? Is this have been mailed out to the incorrect address?
I would suspect it's a typo,
Okay.
and if it is, I will correct that before it comes in the packet. Because certainly the addressing that we worked with was the utility billing for the property owner. The county assessor's record, address of record was one of the addresses, and then there was a third address that we were given to try to contact the property owner. But that's a very fair point, and I will make sure that that typo is corrected.
want to see this move forward to public hearing, and concerned that Vic, Councilmember Cave has addressed that that the possibility that we can give them an extended period of time to mitigate the issue. But I believe that they need to show good faith, that not just communicate, but that they're actually going to be taking action. Because otherwise, we're just, put 30 more days that tree can hang out over that street. Yeah, we're not in the rainy season, thankfully, but all it takes is the tree to go down. But if he's making a positive motion, then I don't have a problem with it for 30 days. But I still want to see this move forward. I still want us to pass. I want a public hearing.
So say on the 30th, the property owner comes in and says, I've got it set up, or somebody's going to come in on the 15th of July or whatever. I mean, that would be acceptable. If that was to follow through on that date. Is that what you're saying, or are you considering, or are you saying if it's not done on the 30th?
The way it's written today is the 30th is the drop deadline. Now, I'm hopeful that the property owner has committed to contact me, and I will definitely work with them and hopefully have a date certain by Monday night, or certainly communicate that is council's as well as staff's pleasure to have this tree mitigated. Hopefully I'll have that date to share Monday night. But if not, the 30th was the absolute drop deadline as it's written tonight.
With that statement being said, we can still hold the 30th as a hard and fast, but allow the administration the discretion if there's a positive, communication with the owners of the property that they are moving forward, that we have to give the administration discretion to hold any kind of legal action or action we have to take to mitigate the concern with the tree.
I just think we should seek voluntary compliance as often as possible, and because we just committed, and I have no issues with what John just presented, we can make the 30th a date for the city to act, but it's a soft date if we have, if landowners making reasonable efforts to mitigate the problem. Because I think we would all rather have voluntary compliance. I think we'd all like to be treated like decent human beings who are willing to do the right thing, and I think we should give the landowner the benefit of the doubt since he has at least in contact with us now. Just want to treat them the way I want to be treated.
There's no objection. I think we move forward then to the meeting, schedule the hearing, and next, ordinance 2015-1900, alteration of frontage road speed limit.
Okay, council, this particular item, resolution before you tonight, has a little bit of a history. I've just very quickly summarized the history. Is the speed limit on frontage road was originally set by ordinance at 35 miles per hour. Slide occurred in 2014. The speed limit, because of the extra traffic and the blockage on West Valley, the speed limit was during that emergent condition was lowered to 25. Well, to establish a speed limit on an arterial classified roadway does require a engineering traffic analysis in order to establish the speed limit. And so through conversation with the Public Works Committee and you as a full council, engineering analysis and traffic study was commissioned, and the Transpo group was the firm that was selected to undertake this work. They put the traffic counters out in April, and then did their analysis on the data that they collected from the vehicle traffic during that time frame. They also did on-site visit to look at the local conditions as well as accident history. And as a result of that effort, they concluded that as a council and for this particular roadway, that they're recommending the speed limit be adjusted at 30 miles per hour. And the information here with the resolution going forward, and then the ordinance to be passed, if you agree, next Monday night, would allow the speed limit to be set at 30 miles per hour on Frontage Road. Summary of the issue, and before I open it up for your questions or comments, Councilmember Putnam did ask a question of me, and I'll frame the question. He had asked whether or not Whitey's auction and their traffic related to the auctions when they're held was factored into the study. The short answer is yes, but peripherally. If I said that right, I apologize, it's late, I won't try that again. But tangentially, they looked at that in the sense that it wasn't the focus of the study, but the data collected and the counts that were collected would have factored the traffic in that business normally has. Now, the period where the traffic counts were collected did not occur on a weekend with an auction. As I spoke to the Transpo group and the representative that did the study, the one point that they made is that when speed studies are done and the engineering analysis is looked at, think of it like a school zone or a special event like around CenturyLink or Quest Stadium, that you don't set the speed limits for special events or occurrences where you have spikes and peaks in traffic. It's really reflective of the entire corridor, and that they felt comfortable that their analysis, they did not recommend or feel that it warranted changing their recommendation of altering the speed limit from 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, my only concern there was that they said that because there were no sidewalks, it presumed there was minimal pedestrian activity, and actually because there are no sidewalks, pedestrians walk in the street. So,
Yeah, one thing I noticed through here is that it didn't cite just one speed limit recommendation. It said it would support 35, which is what the old speed limit was. The accident history also states that the accidents weren't caused by the speed limit, but more from inattentiveness, like cell phone usage and things like that. So based on that information, I'm for putting it back to where it was, the 35. We reduced it because it had a temporary influx of traffic caused by the closure of West Valley Highway, and now that issue is resolved, I think there's no reason not to put it back where it was.
Can I ask how much did the Transpo charge for this survey?
It was, I don't remember the exact dollar amount, but it was just under $5,500.
Really? $5,500 plus the $300 plus 5, so we're looking at $5,800 to screw around with 5 miles an hour. Was that really worth the city? Almost $6,000 for 5 miles an hour?
Well, it wasn't 5, it was 10 because we reduced it from 35 to 25.
Even at 10 miles an hour? That's a lot of money, guys. Okay. A lot of wasted money in my book.
further council discussion?
I can make a comment. I understand what you're talking about, Councilmember Cave, about being at 35. My biggest concern about doing that is it's going to divert the traffic off of West Valley onto Frontage Road. My biggest concern on Frontage Road is summertime it's not so bad because it's daylight at 6:30 in the morning, but in the wintertime when those people are coming to work, I've gone through there and they're driving back and forth, getting across the streets to their job or getting out of their vehicles and stuff, and I'd be more concerned about the safety of the people that are going to work along Frontage Road. And, granted, it's 5 miles an hour, but if you set it at 35, people are doing 40. If you set it at 30, they're doing 35. That's my thought process. If we ran it to 30 miles an hour, I think it's going to lessen the opportunity of diverting traffic off of West Valley and onto Frontage Road. And here's the other thing, I know when I go to work, I drive in Algona all the way because it's 35 on the road before I get over to West Valley and head on into work. I mean, it's just diverting that traffic because of the speed limit on West Valley. I think that's something that we need to think about. You know, when we're looking at the speed limit, I think if you were to go to 30, it's going to be a less of a diversion because it's only 5 miles an hour and they're probably doing 35 on West Valley anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah. One of the issues I brought up at the time was there's a lot of street parking out there, and the businesses aren't having their employees park inside their complex. Are they providing adequate parking with their zone occupancy? And if they do have the parking available, why aren't they using it? And that's something that we need to address with each individual business that are forcing their employees to park on the street, to leave their yards wide open with no vehicles parked in it at all.
Okay, when this first came up the last time about this frontage road and all the cars being parked on it, I had brought this exact same thing up, and we were all told it was going to be looked into. I don't recall who it was that was going to find out why these people were having their people parking on the street as opposed to in their lot. Again, the city drops the ball, not a surprise. So who is in charge of making sure people are parking where they're supposed to be and not on the street, or why they're parking on the street? Whose job is that?
It's a shared responsibility between staff and council. And
No.
there is on-street parking provided currently. If council chooses to restrict parking off that street, that becomes a policy decision.
We asked this question, when did we bring this up on this?
Ken Burnett looked into it. And
Well, that's awesome. So since Ken left, nothing's been done since Ken's been left. His desk has just got dust 8 inches thick. Is that what's going on?
he reported to us.
And
there have been some changes made out there as far as some of the striping on driveway setbacks for parking, a couple of locations where they clarified some things and limited one space on either side. But the majority of the parking there remains legal parking if they choose to park there.
well, why is it pick and choose? Guys Market can't rent their little space out here because they don't have adequate parking. There's lots of street parking. So why can't we just say, why can't we do that? Why do we allow the people on Frontage Road something, but we don't allow this guy something?
Well, each business has to provide adequate parking based on
Well, then why are
their
they
zone.
parking on the street?
And my question to Ken was, did he ensure that they were providing adequate parking? And every business he looked into said that they had areas designated as parking, but they were encouraging their employees to use street parking, which is perfectly legal, but I don't think we need to adjust the speed limit to accommodate the business. I think the road was designed for 35 miles an hour. The speed limit was set at 35 miles an hour. We have a study that says it can be 35 miles an hour. I don't know why we need to change it.
See, that's where I'm with Leanne on this. I drive that road all the time, and people do dart out, and it's hard. And sometimes when they pull out of their driveway, they have to pull their vehicle into the street because they can't see past the cars that are parked. So if we're going to allow them to park on the streets, I would say no more than 30, but if we can get them off the streets and on the lot, 35 is good to go. It's one or the other.
Well,
You can't have both.
I think we need adequate marking and painting on where the legal parking area is so that there's enough clearance coming out of the driveways.
And how much is that study going to cost?
Should be a study for that.
I can speak to that very quickly. There is at a staff level that we need to clean up some of the parking that exists there on street now. For example, the defined area around the fire hydrants, that needs to be delineated and parking prohibited in that area. Also, the business approaches on the driveways, on either side of the driveways, our code says there are so many feet allowable on either side that are permissible. Now that we have the paint striping equipment, that is something that we as a staff can undertake. And then with that, we'll go additional signage to just make it very clear, and then it becomes enforceable where those areas are prohibited from parking. But again, there is still street parking, but it'll be much better defined going forward as we can get this on the work plan.
Well, we can't blame everything on Ken Barnett. Why haven't we been doing this up till this point? Why does there have to be something happening before people do what's supposed to be done?
I'm not exactly sure where that's aimed at, but I don't recall it being such an issue. I would want to
We've been talking
accommodate
about
our
this road forever.
businesses by allowing their employees to park on the street. We allow parking on this street, and I would not go to the businesses and say, look, I don't want you parking on this street no more. Unless council decides that's what they want to do, is make it no parking along Frontage Road, because you would have to make it absolutely no parking.
Right.
Right. My only concern is that you're saying people are driving out, I'm assuming you're saying they're walking out, crossing the street on
They're
foot.
running across the street, they park on the side.
That's called jaywalking, that's against the law, which they have adequate
Really,
crosswalks.
Really?
Well, actually, it's not out there. We do not have a marked crosswalk
There's no
on the south
crosswalk,
end,
that's right.
and it's not signal controlled at the south end. It's not between signals, it's not between crosswalks. They can walk across anywhere they want to.
Couple issues. One, let's stay to the rules. We're not identifying people. People are talking over, we're having some discussions, and it's going back and forth. Let's go back to our rules and control this. The other thing is, before us is whether we're going to agree to the 30 mile. I, myself, would like to see this move forward, and at the time when it comes for vote and discussion at that point, if there's a friendly amendment or, the modification to it, to 35, it can come up before the council to vote, or if it goes to 25. But let's deal with the issue. We've done the study. We were out of compliance when we moved it from 20 to 25, and that was why we did the study, put ourselves back in compliance with what we were out of when we did it the first time. So, I move that we move it forward for next Monday, and then we can bring up discussion amendment-wise, whether we want to adjust it.
Any objection to moving it forward?